Welcome to the Find Focus podcast. Today's episode is called Stop Procrastinating and Start Producing, and I will interview productivity scientist, reformed procrastinator, and creator of Focusmate, Tyler Jacobson. Welcome, Tyler, and great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of background, education, and experience, like with focus and procrastination?
Yeah, absolutely. You could say I have informal training. So my driving passion my whole career has been human potential, productivity, behavioral change. But I think like the less nice way of saying that is I also became pretty aware early in my career that, I was my own worst enemy. The core driver that really sparked this passion was actually the first time I was working from home. And that was in a job where I was sort of partially remote, partially in an office. And I just really struggled to get stuff done when I was remote. And then when I became a full-time entrepreneur, it just only got worse, and I'm happy to dive into that story more. But prior to founding Focusmate, I was an executive coach for about 5 years, worked with entrepreneurs, top startups in New York. So I really got to intensively study behavior change, but also apply it in a real world context and see what works and what doesn't work. What problems are people dealing with? And really also saw that even these high performers, executive clients are really struggling to follow through with a lot of stuff themselves. So that's really kind of the real world training. But, I studied economics at Duke undergrad. I was a management consultant briefly. I was the sixth employee at Teach for India, which was a totally cool experience. But that's sort of the core of what has led me to doing this kind of work.
What problems, like you talked about, having problems working alone and working in the home office, like how was your day looking like specifically, and what challenges did you run into?
Here's what I remember, okay? It's almost like I don't remember the details of it, but I remember how it felt. And and it always felt like I wasn't doing anything until almost noon many days, where somehow those morning hours would just get filled up in sort of this like angsty time waste. And I have no doubt that my computer was out a lot of that time. But it was like I would stick Facebook in that time. I would answer emails. Email is one of my favorite ways to procrastinate. So at that point in my life, I just wasn't equipped to kind of deal with that open-endedness. And so I just blow through that time. And if I was lucky, I would start to get things moving a little bit in the afternoon, but it's not like I'm a late sleeper or something. I'd really be wasting a lot of time. And I just also remember how I felt. I felt so much shame, and I felt a lot of fear too. Like all this time is passing me by, and I'm supposed to be starting this company, and I felt like I was spinning my wheels.
So, and what did you do then? Like, how did you try to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, I think probably for most people, it's really been a lifelong thing of just you learn one skill, you learn one habit at a time. At that point in time, frankly, the first thing I did was I felt so crippled just by the emotional burden, the shame of feeling unproductive, that I decided I gotta just let go of feeling ashamed because of this, because apparently it's hard to work alone. It's hard to work from home. So, so that was step one. And, I started reading a lot of these things. I sort of went into the rabbit hole of the blogosphere of productivity techniques and books and all that stuff. One of my first techniques that I tried was I would just go to Starbucks. sort of treated it like my office for a while. That was okay. It at least sort of prevented some more like conspicuous forms of procrastination, just like eating Cheerios and watching YouTube videos and stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's sort of a laundry list of things that I've done, and well, obviously, my company, ultimately, my startup Focusmate, that was really the big breakthrough, sort of realizing that the one thing that changed everything for me was being accountable some way to other people, surrounding myself, sort of creating an environment that pulled me forward. And that, like if I want to go for a run, if I get a buddy to go for a run with me, like even if it's raining, I'll show up, and I'll run a little bit faster and harder, and realizing that I could apply that for productivity as well. So we can come back and talk more about that. But I think the key insight is that like willpower is really useless. And if you can design an environment so that you don't need to use willpower, like you're way ahead of the game.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think that's what both our companies are about. And you mentioned starting a business. Like, where do you see like making people like the most mistakes in their business when they start a business, or transitioning from a corporate job into being a freelancer or something like that?
Yeah. Where do people make mistakes? I mean, I think probably the most like existential risk and mistake that people make is not solving a real problem. For some reason, we just like, we get big ideas, and ideas are really exciting. And we start to think about a product that we want to build, right? If you're an engineer, you want to start coding. And you can pretty quickly lose sight of like, what's the core pain point that you actually are addressing for people. And frankly, like, even if you don't have a product, even if you don't have a solution, like, you're much better off, I think, if you really deeply understand that pain that you're going after, because people will buy, they'll buy something if it promises to solve their problem, even if it doesn't do that good of a job, versus people will not buy something that could be a beautiful piece of software, but if it doesn't if it doesn't purport to solve a real problem, then people won't buy it. So I think that's probably the biggest mistake people make. And then, like, once you're in execution mode, I think we easily get distracted. Like we were just talking before we started the show, like, with marketing is like the classic example where there's literally an unlimited number of things you can do for marketing. And, with starting a business, your job is to do everything. And yet your job really is to figure out what's the one thing that's most important that's going to move your business ahead, and forget about literally everything else, even though it's really painful. Like I like to say, you got to let a lot of small fires burn. And don't grab the fire extinguisher or the hose. You just let them burn, because you don't have time for that. Like, you got to just choose that one thing. So I think that's a really common mistake as well. Is just start trying to do everything when you really can't and shouldn't.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. And it's so hard to do. Like for me, myself, like, we get bombarded with all this great content, like what kind of marketing there is and what kind of marketing channels we could use and track. But if you're not helping anybody, it like, what do you want to amplify? What do you want to use the marketing for? And so I'm thinking it's really about the pain that you're solving. And yeah, maybe you can tell us about your solution. Like, I think that's it's called virtual co-working, and the solution you built to overcome this challenge of procrastination.
Yeah. I think your point's really good, though. So let me come back to that. But like, I just wanted to give you an example. I mean, I think my core, my weakness is I would be sort of like OCD about doing my to-do lists. And I'm sure there's some listeners out there who like feel that same compulsion, right? Where you feel like you're getting things done when you like do your whole to-do list. And now, like, I don't think I ever finish my to-do list. Like, the next day comes, and then you have to, I try to ask myself, like, okay, what's the most important thing I need to do today? And you sort of have this like little moment of heartbreak where you're just like, okay, like 8 other things that I didn't do. Like, I'm not going to get to you today or maybe ever. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to paint that picture on a slightly more personal level. So virtual co-working. Yeah, thanks for asking. So, I think taking a step back, like there's two really critical pieces, or like trends going on in the world, right? One is that we are just so freaking distracted. Like, we are human beings. We're not equipped to handle constant distractions and stimulation and like options that we have to just get a quick hit of satisfaction. And like, it feels good to check Facebook, but like it really feels bad ultimately to just not do the things that you really want to be doing. Right. So, and the data on this is terrifying, like people who are out there listening and feeling like, they are the worst. This is increasingly like, this is everybody. Everybody's procrastinating. Everybody's distracted. ADHD scripts have gone up 4 times in the last 15 years or so. Severe chronic procrastination, it's now over 20% of the adult population. So you can sort of imagine what that implies for like middle of the bell curve normal people. Everybody's procrastinating. So that's number one, is just we're all really distracted. And number two is we're working alone. Offices have stuck around for a long time, but that's starting to change actually. So about a third of computer workers are now predominantly remote. And of course we have people taking courses increasingly online now. So you're not going to a classroom or a campus anymore. You're just sitting at your house, like maybe after work, trying to chip away at that course. People are trying to start businesses on the side, the side hustlers, so to speak. So you have these really big and growing cohorts of people who are working alone. And it's actually really unhealthy and unnatural. I saw this data point that blew my mind recently, that loneliness is a greater predictor of early death than obesity. So, this is kind of the new world that we live in, right? We're distracted and we're alone, and those two things together, it's just the tsunami of bad news for our productivity. So, our goal. We talk about building a virtual co-working product, and that's our business at Focusmate. Our goal is to solve those two problems, right? Let's not be distracted, and let's create some real human connection when we're working alone. And so our first test, if you will, I won't even really call it a product, but our first test was we basically set up 2 users who sit side by side remotely over a video call while they both get work done. Yeah. So it's sort of like a study buddy, or I actually alluded to going for a run with a friend. In this case, it's not a collaborative thing. You're not chatting with each other. There's no coach and client. It's actually peer-to-peer accountability partners who show up and sit with each other while you get your work done. And it's a ridiculously effective format or environment. We talked about environment to help you get stuff done. It's sort of like, for me back at school, like I would ask a friend to go to the library and sit with me, because I knew that having somebody there and having that quiet environment, I was basically guaranteed to get stuff done. Whereas if I went anywhere else, like there's a good chance I get distracted. So we're sort of trying to create that kind of environment that kind of locks you into being productive.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I found for myself, I created my software also to change the environment on the computer, and I noticed I would use my software when I'm at the computer to not go on Facebook or watch YouTube videos, but your software or your service being accountable with some real person made me actually to show up in front of the computer, and that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. There's a lot of people that say, I'm waking up 2 hours earlier to start work, just because I've been using Focusmate, and now that I have these appointments, I get out of bed and magically I am at my computer at 6 a.m. every day getting work done, which is amazing.
So, who are the people who typically use Focusmate?
Yeah, so we've talked about some of them. It's freelancers, it's remote workers, people who are separated from their teams and their company. Lots of students of really like every age and level. People, whether they're just like taking an online course or they're doing their master's or they're part of an online university. A lot of sort of entrepreneurs and side hustlers. Like it's tough, especially if you have like a day job, to make yourself like show up at the computer either before work or after work or on the weekend. So those people use Focusmate to just like, you know what, I want to bang out 4 hours on Saturday, so I'm going to use Focusmate.
Yeah, awesome. Can you share some specifics how the software helps? Maybe some features, or what do you do to help people get into the process of virtual co-working?
Yeah. So, well, let me sort of describe what happens on a Focusmate session when you have an appointment. So, today, it's actually very simple, and we can talk about kind of where we're going. But the Focusmate appointment is a 50-minute appointment, and when you show up, you spend about 60 seconds. You greet your partner and say, "Hey, Martin, like, good to see you. What's your goal for this hour?" And you'd tell me, I have to edit this podcast or something, right? And then you write that down. We have a chat interface, and then you'd say, "All right, Taylor, what's your goal for this session?" I'd say, I've got to follow up with Martin, to ask him for an introduction or something, and I would write that down as well. And then 60 seconds or so goes by. We've both specified exactly what we're going to do. We've both written it down. By the way, there's lots of research that shows that really helps. And then we're just quietly working. We get to work. We leave the video on. A lot of people will either use a dedicated device so that they can have that video up, whether their tablet or their phone, or I have two screens, which is really nice. And every time you finish a task, you'll update that in the chat. You'll say, "All right, I finished that," and you'll write down what your next task is. And we have a little timer there so you can see the 50 minutes going by, and then session ends. It's sort of like the end of this like intense productivity sprint. It ends, and you're like, "Hey, Martin, how'd it go?" And you have this moment reflection, which there's again more research that shows that stopping to reflect periodically is really valuable for productivity. So you do that together as well. You reflect on how it went, and you kind of get to like have a shared moment of celebration as well, because you just cranked some important workout for 50 minutes. So that's what happens in an appointment. If you sign up for Focusmate, what you'll see is it's basically a calendar interface where you're just saying, "Hey, these are the times that I want to get work done." And part of what we offer is you don't have to think about anybody else. You just are saying, "This is when I'm free." You schedule your sessions and we take care of the rest. And where we're heading is really creating a custom experience so that the people that you're working with, the style of work that they do you like to, have a really quiet session? Do you like to have a slightly more collaborative session? Do you want to do just one-on-one? Do you want to do a small group? Do you want to work with somebody who's working on something similar as you? So that's where we're heading is it's almost like a social network for productivity, a really a tailored tribe of people, of virtual coworkers that you love and can count on and are really supportive for you.
How many people are in this tribe right now?
Oh, I think our Facebook group just topped 1,300 people this week. So, growing fast. Yeah.
What's your favorite success or story that somebody maybe shared in the Facebook group or emailed you or something like that? Like, what kind of success do people see when they use it?
There's way too many to count or even play favorites, but one that was posted just a few days ago, this woman, she was working on her master's thesis, and she was really starting to freak out because she was so far behind schedule. And this was, I think she must have graduated or completed her thesis just a few weeks ago. And she only joined Focusmate maybe 3 months ago. So she was really far behind schedule. And she just shared a photo of herself, like with a glass of wine, sort of, and some certificate that she was sort of toasting having finished this thing. And she basically said, I was nowhere near going to get this thing done. And Focusmate just totally turned it around. And I just got really productive, and I crushed it. And delivered my master's thesis on time. So we see stories like that all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember like getting an email like for somebody using my software, and it said like, yeah, I got this thesis done that I procrastinated for 8 months or something within a week of using my software. Like it's really good feeling to know to solve this pain point that we talked about earlier, and really to help people and solve a problem there.
Yeah, and actually, sometimes the best emails I get are from people who they're really vulnerable. They don't always post these on Facebook, but they say, I was really anxious, or I was really worried, or I was I was beating myself up. A lot of us start to relate to ourselves as procrastinators, but we also use much worse words in our head to describe ourselves. And so a lot of people will reach out and say that they've sort of turned around that narrative, and they no longer feel like a procrastinator. They've developed these new habits suddenly, and they're no longer anxious. They're no longer worried. They go to sleep on Sunday night, like looking forward to the week, because they know they can count on themselves to get their most important work done. And that, like, hearing that feels really good.
Yeah. How much do you charge for your service? I think a lot of people would like to try it and maybe afraid of, having to spend a lot of money on that.
Yep. Well, they're in luck. Focusmate is free. So no reason not to give it a shot. Focusmate.com.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that was my next question, where people can get started. And how can people find out more about you and what you do? I think it's focusmate.com, right?
Yes, focusmate.com. That's focusmate.com. It's so you can check out our website. Lots of information on there. And we also have a Facebook group, which, if you want to see what other people are saying, without the our website, you go on our website and you kind of have to take our word for it. There's some testimonials, but the great thing about our Facebook group is that's the community. That's real people. You can pop in there and just listen, be a wallflower for a little, and you'll see how it's an incredibly positive and supportive group of people. And we've been talking about, creating an environment that helps you be productive. Well, an environment like your software, prevents you from going somewhere or tracks how you're doing, right? Tracking things helps. The Focusmate interaction with that partner, that's a great environment. But part of your environment is also the community that you're part of, and the people that whose voice is in your head when you're debating something, or who you're going to see tomorrow and have to give an update on how things are going. So when you have a really supportive community, that actually creates a really positive environment as well. So that's part of what we have achieved with the Focusmate Facebook group, and I definitely encourage people to check that out too.
Yeah, that's one point I think a lot of people underestimate, and I think Charles Duhigg wrote about this in his book, The Power of Habit, that it actually takes belief, and being part of a community creates and reinforces the belief to really change your habits and change the habits of procrastination.
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a good point, Martin, because like we think of ourselves, I think sometimes we relate to ourselves as like almost like machines that have to be optimized or something. And we're like, oh, I'm just broken, you know? Even that word is that we use, it's actually like doesn't really make sense for human beings. It makes sense for a machine is broken. But suddenly your thoughts and your behavior, if you go around people who are behaving a different way, who have a different belief set, you don't even have to do anything. It just starts to affect you and change your beliefs and change your habits and behavior. So like, it's really like the ultimate hack, right? Is like, just change your environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, do you have any other last thoughts for this interview?
No, this was fantastic. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor, for being here. And yeah, thank everybody for listening. And yeah, check out Focusmate. It's a great service. It's free. And I really like to use it. And it will definitely help you to get productive.
Awesome. Thanks, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor.